The person who answered the phone was that manager. Even from the other end of the line, it was clear that he was irritated. When I mentioned that I couldn't go to work due to my grandmother's funeral, the manager once again started saying something absurd.
Don't take time off for weddings and funerals. Where do you find such idiots? Come to the office right away.
Despite explaining that I was at a funeral, the manager demanding I come to the office might not have a heart. Thinking that I didn't want to work with someone indifferent to others' feelings anymore, I spoke to the manager on the other end of the phone. Well then, I quit. It may not be necessary for the company, but this funeral is the most important thing in my life. Thank you for everything. The manager was delighted to have gotten rid of someone he didn't like from the company, but the next day, he would regret his joy. When he was suddenly summoned to the president's office, the manager was angrily yelled at.
Where is he? Explain. But don't think it'll go smoothly depending on the content.
Huh?
It was the first time the manager realized he had done something irreparable. I'm David, a 42-year-old office worker. When I was in elementary school, my parents died in a traffic accident and my grandmother, Sarah, took me in and raised me. I became a truant, pessimistic about life after suddenly losing my parents. Because I couldn't calm down even at home, I started going out alone at night. Those who think life is over tend to gather together. Looking back now, maybe I wanted to fill the loneliness, but it's also true that I began to associate with bad guys more and more. I was among the nuisance group that just rode around the streets on motorcycles at night. Even family members might abandon someone who engages in delinquency like that, but whenever my grandmother realized I had gone out, she would always come after me. She would catch me trying to escape outside and give me a lecture. I was 15 at the time, but I couldn't compete with my grandmother in her late 60s.
Even if you do this, your parents won't come back. You're just running away from reality.
She would give me the same lecture every time she caught me. Even though I said I was tired of hearing it, my grandmother wouldn't listen, and she kept lecturing me many times over until I obediently said yes. It didn't matter how many people were with me. My grandmother, who would just calmly take me back without hesitation, seemed invincible. But my grandmother, who never resorted to excessive violence, seemed to combine kindness and fear. As I grew up, I began to see signs of decline in my grandmother. I was worried, but my grandmother never complained.
Don't worry about me. You just need to do what you have to do.
While saying that, my grandmother's back as she went to bring in the laundry is still unforgettable. I never knew my grandmother was such a small person. Even after I got a job at my uncle's company, I never thought about leaving my grandmother. I wanted to stay by her side and support her until the end, considering all the trouble I had caused her. Seeing me not wanting to leave, my grandmother said, "Get married and get out soon." When I was a child, she would say stay at home, and when I became an adult, she would say go out, thinking she was a crazy person, but it was thanks to her that I was able to grow up so much. 1 year after becoming bedridden, after assisting my grandmother, who was over 90 years old, I would go to work every day. I can keep pushing myself like this every day because my grandmother is here. However, it was also true that I was starting to feel reluctant to go to work. Recently, a new manager came from a certain foreign company. The manager's name is John, a person in his late 30s who used to work for a foreign company. He had an extremely overbearing personality and was stubborn, not considering other people's circumstances. I heard that competition is fierce in foreign companies, and it's common for the atmosphere within the company to be tense. Sure enough, it seems that the manager was heavily influenced by his experience in the foreign company when he joined our company.
Now that I'm in this company, sales have to more than double. Everyone should follow me desperately. I'll definitely reward those who work hard with a good salary.
He was young and more proactive than experienced people, with a lively demeanor. He was trying to liven up the scene by giving instructions, but there were times when things didn't go smoothly. At first, my colleagues watched with smiles, but as they encountered more and more selfish situations, they began to distance themselves from the manager.
It's no use doing what that manager says. It's better to stay away.
I was advised like that, but if I kept doing that, it wouldn't be productive. Even though I argued that it was necessary to approach him even if I didn't like him, my colleagues never nodded their heads. One day, I was instructed to place an order with a client, and although I did as I was told, within 5 minutes, the situation turned into cancel the order. If I had called immediately, it wouldn't have been a big deal, but the attitude of the manager at that time was particularly annoying.
Sure, I told you to place the order, but it's not right to leave all the decisions to me. Figure things out and act on your own.
As if I was at fault for silently following orders, the manager said in a voice loud enough for others to hear. Internally frustrated, I managed to laugh it off somehow. My colleagues sighed and said, as expected, it seemed that this younger manager was more troublesome than I had thought. To be honest, I even started thinking I didn't want to deal with him unless he was my boss. However, the manager found me the most convenient to use, and he started exploiting me for even trivial matters. Although I had my own work to do, he would still push unnecessary tasks onto me, knowing fully well. I tried to endure it as much as I could, but when I finally pleaded with him to consider my workload as well, the manager didn't take it seriously.
This company is too lenient. In the company I used to work for, every day was a battlefield, and people like you didn't last. You're different, so I'm using you specially. Be grateful.
He kept talking as if he was doing me a favor by favoring me. Even though he ignored other colleagues when they approached him, he knew I wouldn't refuse, so he took advantage of me as he pleased. And I've never even thought about going to a foreign company or wanting to work there. I wish he would stop justifying himself with irrelevant talk. The manager never noticed my efforts to be polite and considerate, nor did he stop himself from saying unnecessary things that would annoy people. Is this the mentality typical of foreign companies? After that, the manager took advantage of the fact that I didn't complain and started dumping impossible tasks on me. He would assign work just before the end of the day, or even call me in on my days off for his personal errands, treating me like a good-natured slave. But he's the promising employee everyone expects a lot from. I've been here for years, but even if I complain, without evidence, it would just be brushed aside. If our relationship were to turn sour, who knows what he might do? One day, while I was hoping I could either get promoted or transferred to another department, my grandmother's condition worsened. My grandmother had an enlarged heart, and there was a problem with its structure. Normally, the heart has valves to prevent fresh blood and old blood from mixing, but my grandmother's heart valve had changed shape with age and could no longer close completely. As a result, old blood mingled with the blood sent throughout her body, causing symptoms of fatigue. Even though surgery was an option, the prognosis was poor, and due to age, the doctors didn't recommend it. Thinking that I might need to stay home worrying about my grandmother, she denied my thoughts, anticipating them.
I've lived long enough. You've grown up admirably. I don't want anything more. Don't quit your job because of me.
Even though she was the one suffering the most, my grandmother never asked me to stay by her side stubbornly. Yet, despite that, I still wanted to stay with her and take care of her. Then, suddenly, my phone rang. Although I had a bad feeling, when I looked at the screen, the manager's name was displayed. It was the worst possible timing, but when I answered the call, the manager didn't bother to check on my situation and unilaterally announced,
I'm going golfing now. I'll invite you since I'm feeling generous.
an unexpected invitation to go golfing. However, considering my grandmother's condition, I couldn't go immediately. I tried to politely decline without upsetting the manager, but he showed no signs of backing down. When I honestly told him that a family member was ill, unbelievable words came out of the manager's mouth.
Don't waste your life for someone who's on their last legs.
That single phrase was nothing short of an insult to my grandmother, who had taken care of me all these years. He was meddling in my family affairs without knowing anything about me or my grandmother. Feeling that he was someone I couldn't trust as a human being, I countered the manager. What do you know about our relationship? You're disliked even within the company because you casually say things like that, aren't you?
Are you serious about that? I've been taking care of you specially. You'll regret this.
The manager seemed to have more to say, but I forced myself to end the conversation by hanging up. There was no point in continuing to talk. I felt like I might regret acting on impulse, but there was no way I could endure such words. My grandmother wasn't just a guardian to me. She's my irreplaceable family member. Being disregarded by someone else was nothing but humiliating. In the end, my grandmother's condition worsened, and she had to be hospitalized to monitor her condition. I couldn't stand the frustration of being unable to do anything, but I continued to pray for my grandmother's return, trusting the hospital. However, my wish did not come true, and that day my grandmother passed away. Her irregular heartbeat was detected in the middle of the night, but the doctor didn't arrive in time. The nurse told me she had said, "I hate hospitals. I'll show you I can go home." I can only admire my grandmother, who fought bravely against illness until the very end. Losing my only family member besides me was beyond sad. I wanted to keep crying, but no one around me would wait. The day after my grandmother's casket was brought in, a funeral was hastily arranged. I served as the chief mourner and informed relatives of my grandmother's passing. Even though I wanted to be by my grandmother's side as much as possible. On the day of the funeral, which happened to be a work day, I was trying to contact the company to inform them that I would be absent for my grandmother's funeral. The one who answered the phone was that manager. I could tell from the other end of the line that he was irritated. When I told him I couldn't go to work because of my grandmother's funeral, the manager once again said something unpleasant.
Don't take time off for funerals or weddings. Who does that? Come to the office right away.
Despite explaining that it was during the funeral, the fact that the manager demanded I come to work showed his lack of empathy. I didn't want to work any longer with someone who was so indifferent to others' feelings, so I told him over the phone. Well then, I quit. This funeral may be unnecessary for the company, but it's the most important thing in my life. Thank you for everything. I no longer needed the company after making up my mind. I could endure being by my grandmother's side even for just a second longer. As I made that decision, I heard mocking laughter as if ridiculing my judgment.
Are you planning to quit? Are you out of your mind? I don't know how many years you've worked here, but you're really a disappointment. Even if you beg to come back, I won't care. Do your best at your age.
The manager then hung up after spewing sarcastic remarks. There was never any understanding between us until the very end. Perhaps that was just how things were meant to be. Now liberated from that, when I thought of spending time for my grandmother's sake, I was approached by my uncle, Bob, from behind.
You've taken good care of my mother all this time. I'm sure she was happy to live with you.
My uncle was my late mother's brother and my grandmother's son. He told me that if my grandmother hadn't taken me in, I would have been entrusted to him. At the time, he had just started his own company and couldn't afford to take care of me, so my grandmother took me in and raised me, not wanting to interfere with his work.
Who are you talking to? Of course, you've informed the company that you're taking time off, right?
My uncle seemed to be trying to find out if something had happened after hearing the previous phone call. As he had brought me into the company, I couldn't keep quiet about what had just happened. Wouldn't it be disrespectful not to repay my uncle's kindness for bringing me into the company? However, I couldn't stay silent, so I honestly explained the situation to him. I hadn't expected that my actions would expose the manager's misdeeds. At first, my uncle was listening calmly, but as soon as I told him I had quit, his face turned pale. And when I told him that the reason I quit was because a boss had demanded I come to the office on the day of the funeral, his pale face turned red in an instant.
Did that John really tell you to come to work on the day of the funeral?
My trembling uncle nodded in silence. There was no point in hiding it, and it wouldn't benefit me. I apologized to him for quitting. However, my uncle said, "Such apologies don't matter," and put his hands on my shoulders.
I'm sorry. It's because of my company that you had to go through such a hard time. I won't be able to face my mother even in the afterlife like this. Please wait a little longer. I'll come to question him tomorrow.
After saying that, the next day after the funeral, I was at home alone when my uncle called. While hoping it wasn't a big issue, I answered the call, and my uncle apologized loudly.
I just heard the whole story from John. I don't remember ever allowing something like this within the company.
My uncle recounted his conversation with the manager. The next morning, when he called the manager in for questioning, he walked into the president's office without sensing anything wrong.
What's this about, Bob? Did you call me in this early for good news?
Thinking he might be getting a promotion, the manager tried to curry favor with my uncle as soon as he entered the room, but my uncle was irritated by his attitude and got angry. When he asked why I wasn't at the company, the flustered manager spilled everything.
I heard about the funeral over the phone, but there seems to be a misunderstanding. He repeatedly said he needed time off for the funeral.
However, the manager didn't seem remorseful and tried to justify his actions by saying I had acted on my own. Not realizing the relationship between me and my uncle, the manager shamelessly lied.
He's always had a habit of lying. I've been fooled many times too. He even asked me to take him golfing, but when I invited him, he said he couldn't come. And about the funeral, that's a lie too. He always tried to take time off on important days like that.
The uncle couldn't tolerate this statement any longer, so he informed the manager that he was also present at the funeral. When the manager learned the truth, he froze and didn't move a muscle. Perhaps at that moment, he realized the relationship between us. And because he understood in his head that everything he had said was a lie, he froze. Even though the manager was confident in his words, he probably didn't know how to justify himself. Finally, the uncle, who had made up his mind, declared his determination to the manager.
What you did was outrageous. Not only that, but you also mistreated a subordinate and a relative of mine. I can forgive you. We will discuss your disciplinary action at the internal meeting from now on.
He said that and told him to leave the president's office, but the manager didn't seem to agree and begged for mercy. He clung to Bob's legs and cried out, "Have mercy, have mercy." It was quite a scene. After that, with the help of other employees, he was taken outside, and Bob immediately called me.
I'm sorry, but can you come back again? Our company still lacks manpower, and such people are coming in frequently. There may be no end to the problems, but I want to expand our business.
Bob earnestly begged me over the phone to come back. Thanks to him, I was able to live with my grandmother while working. At my current age, it would be tough to start working at another company from scratch. Now that my grandmother is gone, I wanted to do my best at my familiar job. After that, the manager was disciplined and expelled from the company. As we listened to what the manager had done within the company, it became apparent that he had often imposed unreasonable demands on others, not just on me. It was even worse for a beautiful female employee in the accounting department who was almost called in late at night. He behaved as he pleased not only within the company but also outside. He used his position to place orders with subcontractors at ridiculously high prices and threatened not to place orders again if they dared to resist. My uncle, who was in charge of supervision, was at a loss for what to do with a situation that seemed endless. Afterward, the company decided to demand compensation from the former manager for seriously damaging trust. The amount of damage was reported to be astronomical, and it would probably be an amount that couldn't be paid even if he worked for a lifetime.
This is unheard of. It can be said that this company has been built on trust so far. We cannot forgive him for tarnishing it.
Although he was an excellent talent, Bob seemed to reflect on the fact that an unreasonable person could only lead to the collapse of social order. After returning to the company, I redirected the passion I had for my grandmother towards my work. Thanks to that, everything went smoothly, and I enjoyed it. Even when overtime was necessary, I didn't hesitate to do it. As our performance improved, I was offered a promotion by Bob. He even told me that he wanted me to succeed him as a successor. Ever since I lost my grandmother, I was afraid I might fall into despair again, but it seems that was unnecessary worry. Instead of drowning in sorrow, I want to keep myself busy. Perhaps my grandmother wished for that. Maybe she worried about what would happen after she was gone and wanted to steer me towards work. If that's the case, I can't thank my grandmother enough. Though it's too late for repaying her kindness, I had been thinking if I could contribute to society through my work. And then, I fell in love and got married to a new female employee who joined a company. She was too good for me, and she could do anything around the house. Thanks to her, I could concentrate more on my work, and the company expanded its scale. Bob also seemed satisfied with my achievements. Bob invited me. Why don't we visit the grave?
I'll show her the impressive grandchild. That's the best thing. And shouldn't we report about her great-grandchild too?
Yes, my wife was carrying my child. Although I was worried because of her advanced age, she insisted on having a child, so I made up my mind too. No matter what happens, I'll protect my baby, just like my grandmother did for me. There's still a lot to do, and it's tough, but I feel like there are more people supporting me than before. From now on, I want to support people, not just being supported. Thinking like my gentle and reliable grandmother, I headed towards her grave. At the front door, I handed an envelope to my mill, saying it was some spending money. She refused, saying she didn't need money, but I insisted, telling her to buy something for the kids. The letter enclosed expressed my gratitude for her care over the years and my apology for not being able to protect the family. That was the last time I saw my mill and my wife.
We never really had good chemistry, did we? You've also had a hard time living with your in-laws. It must have been suffocating for you as a man. However, I do appreciate you giving my parents peace of mind.
My wife said that in a calm tone. I couldn't feel any gratitude or consolation in her words or expression. I am Michael Carter, 48 years old. I'm a manager at a pharmaceutical company. My only daughter, Emily, is a college student studying abroad in France. So it was just my wife and I living together. Her words went on.
Do we really need to keep trying? Life's entering its second half. It's okay to let go of things we've done reluctantly and live out the dreams we couldn't achieve before. Life is once, after all. So I'm not going to Vietnam. An overseas transfer to a developing country. You must be joking. At your age, a 5-year stint in Vietnam sounds like a demotion, doesn't it? It's embarrassing, really. I'm fed up with our current life, and you want me to live even more inconveniently? The fact that you have to follow personnel decisions doesn't change, whether I'm here or not. You should go alone and fulfill your employee duties, but I can't. Just because I'm your wife doesn't mean I have to blindly follow your demotion, right?
With that, she left the room. She probably wants to enjoy the rest of her life as she pleases. Honestly, I saw this coming. But knowing it didn't stop the words from hurting. I couldn't help but feel the pain of a bad premonition turning into reality. I married Linda 23 years ago. We went to different universities but met in a common club. Linda was proactive, cheerful, and stood out. We never met alone during college, but she reached out after I started working, and we began dating. I think she liked where I got a job. It's a well-known, top-tier company with a long history in the pharmaceutical industry. In addition to pharmaceuticals, it also deals with health foods and cosmetics. The company is expanding sales in populous Southeast Asia, developing skincare products suited to the climate, and is now preparing for local sales. We have been selling pharmaceuticals in Vietnam and the Philippines for a while, and sending employees there is not a new strategy. It's about exploring new markets and training local staff, not a demotion. However, Linda, who prefers a luxurious lifestyle, probably hoped for Europe. During our 23-year marriage, we've been abroad 3 times. Our honeymoon was in Hawaii, and the other 2 trips were to France and Italy. All of them were her choices. Linda also went on women-only trips with her college friends. They always went to Europe. She bought luxury goods at duty-free shops abroad and brought back cosmetics for me and our daughter.
Men should wear cologne, too.
I was pressured into using scents I didn't like. When Linda was away, her mother, Sarah, would come over to cook. Originally, this house was built in Linda's parents' backyard as a home for the newlyweds. Linda's travels were not only abroad, but sometimes on weekends, so Sarah often took care of things in her absence. Her cooking might not be fancy, but it's the epitome of American home cooking, and both my daughter, Emily, and I always enjoyed it. It tasted better than Linda's cooking, and I could feel her genuine desire to serve delicious food. On the other hand, Linda dislikes cooking. Knowing this, Sarah frequently brings over dishes. While we live separately, part of me thinks living with she would be easier, considering her efforts. But my wife dislikes that idea. She can't stand her mother's nagging. To me, her complaints seem justified, but to Linda, they're nothing but annoying scoldings. What Linda really wants is not a caring mother, but a housekeeper who silently manages all the household chores. Between the times we finish Sarah's dishes and wait for the next, my wife's cooking makes an appearance as a stopgap. Curry rice, stew, pasta, or Chinese food. In winter, she cooks French onion soup. On those days, the trash bin tells a different story. It overflows with pre-cut vegetables for curry, pasta sauce, ingredients for soup, all in their packaging. My wife never bothered to align trash disposal with the pickup schedule. I try to understand, given my own busy weekdays. But Linda is a homemaker. She has never worked a day in her life. Engrossed in her hobbies like theater and tennis since her younger days, she neglects the housework. Every time, Sarah ends up tidying up the house. I believe she carried our daughter, Emily, on her back much more often than Linda did. My Phil once suggested having another child. He wants a grandson.
No more kids. Pregnancy and raising one was enough.
Linda would frown and say that each time. I've told her not to say such things in front of Emily. What child would be happy to see their mother visibly fed up with parenting? Emily wasn't a gloomy child, perhaps taking after her mother's lively nature, but she seemed somewhat indifferent towards people. Whether that's her true character or the result of her mother's indifferent parenting, I can't tell. But if we were to have only one child, I wish she'd engage more deeply with her. Seeing my wife plan her schedule as soon as my business trips were confirmed made me wonder what our marriage was all about. Even though both are mothers to an only daughter, my wife and Mill are worlds apart. I'm the middle child of 3 siblings, with an older brother and a younger sister. In the countryside, expectations for the eldest son were high, and my brother was cherished, while I, 2 years younger, wore his hand-me-downs. My sister, being the youngest, must have been especially adored. I might have felt excluded, even if our parents didn't realize it. That's why I thought when I got married, I would love our children with all my heart. I always wanted to create a home where the family could feel happiness at all times. I worked hard to ensure we had no financial worries and helped with household chores and child rearing as much as I could. But living with a wife who didn't prioritize home life only increased my burdens. Maybe for Linda, marriage and childbirth were just things she thought she'd try once. My Phil passed away around the time Emily started elementary school. As my Mil no longer needed to care for her husband, Linda relied on her mother even more than before, making her even freer. It was my daughter, rather than my wife, who was worried about my trip to Vietnam. Emily, my daughter, spent a month in Paris on a homestay during her first year of high school. It sparked her interest in France, and so she transferred to a university in France starting from her junior year of college. She often sends pictures and updates from there via WhatsApp and writes detailed messages about the struggles of living abroad. Mark, don't tell Mom. The only things I'm grateful for in my marriage to Linda are the love from my in-laws and having my daughter. By this time, Linda was probably as tired of married life as a child gets tired of playing house. On the morning of my departure, I carried my packed suitcase downstairs alone. I left the signed divorce papers on the bedroom sideboard. A sticky note was attached to it beforehand, and it read, "Please sign this before you go." She planned to tell Emily and Sarah after I had left. I didn't want to cause a stir before leaving, so I complied.
Why leave now, when there's really no need to go out at a time like this?
Linda had been away on a trip with her classmates since the day before. She claimed she couldn't cancel the reservation made well in advance because it would be unfair to her friends. I no longer cared about such things. Sarah, waiting to see me off at the front door, seemed even smaller. Please take good care of Linda and look after your health.
Take care of yourself too. Drink enough water and watch your meals.
Please stay healthy. I'll rely on you when Emily comes back.
Take care.
I thanked her sincerely and got into the waiting taxi. I gave Sarah an envelope of money, calling it pocket money. She refused to accept it, but I insisted she use it to buy something Emily likes. The envelope also contained a letter of thanks for her care over the years and an apology for not being able to keep the family together. I think Emily had a hunch about it. Seeing Emily always looking outside, away from home, made me wonder if that's why she left, to avoid facing her anxieties. That was the last time I saw Sarah and Linda. I had no enthusiasm left to start a new life in a foreign country. Leaving my homeland behind, I felt no nostalgia, only the heavy pain of a broken home as I left JFK. Time passed, and I returned to the U.S. Heading to one of the top hotels in New York, the area was bustling due to the weekend. That day, a Thanksgiving party was being held to celebrate the 100th anniversary of my company. It was a buffet party for employees and their families. I went with Laine. She is my new wife, whom I met during my 5 years living in Vietnam. I was drawn to her unobtrusive yet attentive demeanor. After 2 years of dating, we decided to marry, knowing we would return to USA. She learned English in preparation for our life here. Many in Vietnam speak French due to colonial history. Laine, inheriting her grandfather's accent, relearned and taught French at a language school. There, she interacted with American teachers and students, which was how we met. She seems to have a knack for languages. She's even better at French than me. That day, she wore a traditional Vietnamese ao dai, a slim-fitting dress. Perhaps because the slim-fitting traditional attire wouldn't suit otherwise, it seemed that overweight women were rarely seen in Vietnam. Although she isn't very tall, Lian looks slender and elegant, her hair tied up with decorative hairpins and earrings that enhanced her appearance. After descending from the elevator, we walked into the venue together. Her ao dai was a deep wine color with large flower embroidery. It was not flashy, but elegant, making me feel proud. Life in Vietnam turned out to be more comfortable than I expected. The climate suited me as I disliked it cold, and our apartment was a serviced residence. It was fully furnished and included thrice weekly cleaning and laundry services. We could watch American TV shows and had access to a pool and gym. Living without household chores in a slightly better environment made me think Linda would have liked it had she come. Many Americans lived in my apartment complex. As I began learning Vietnamese, not only did I become acquainted with more American people, but I also started to increase my circle of Vietnamese acquaintances, one or two at a time. Everyone was kind and friendly, with no airs about them. Surprisingly, American products were available locally, so living there was easy. Our company needed to make inroads here. Getting used to life brought new goals and more comfort. That winter, Emily came from France during her break.
I'm worried about Grandma, so I need to go home to the US. But maybe it's better not to see Mom. I was more concerned about whether you could manage. Dad?
Linda grew up and lived in her hometown, but Emily, having experienced living abroad from a young age, seemed to have more specific concerns. Even when she went to Paris for a language course, it was fun for her at first due to its novelty, but after 2 weeks, the frustration of not being able to communicate and feelings of inferiority overwhelmed her. She got sick of the same food every day and hit a cultural wall. Having experienced that, her study in France after that was much more relaxed, and being better at French made it comfortable. She seemed to enjoy it a lot.
So, Dad, you shouldn't get upset thinking, why is Vietnam like this? Accept everything as a novelty, thinking, so this is normal here. Getting stressed because it's not like the US won't solve anything. It just makes it harder for you.
Seeing Emily giving advice like a counselor, I realized how much she had grown up. Still, the divorce during her absence felt like deceiving my daughter, and I felt guilty. Something must have been wrong or lacking. I feel bad for you.
It's okay.
After the meal, we made sweet Vietnamese coffee and sat down together.
If you can't be happy together, there's no point forcing it. No matter how hard you try, some people just don't mesh. In France, I initially stayed with American people because it was comforting. You can tell what someone is like because the language is the same, right? But gradually, I started feeling maybe this person and I don't click. Conversely, I found that even with foreigners, there are those with whom I strangely get along. Even though our languages and upbringings are different, and our values and everything else should be too, it's enjoyable to be with them. You just naturally get along with some people without effort. I think it's about fate or compatibility. Even if you're family, saying you should get along unconditionally doesn't change the fate or compatibility that exists. I've always struggled with Mom trying to control everything. I wanted to learn swimming, but she forced me into piano lessons because I'm a girl, and then got angry at me for lacking enthusiasm. I hated practicing in front of her, which made me dislike it even more. She also tried to dress me in her preferred style and got mad when I cut my hair short. Yet, when it was time to change clothes for the season, she couldn't even remember where my uniform was, often leaving it at the cleaners. It felt like everything at home was always half done and chaotic. I might not be supposed to say this, but living with her made me determined not to be such a mother.
That's tough, Emily.
But Grandma was always there to help. Mom often scolded her for spoiling me, but I think Mom was really the one depending on her.
To think she can view adults so calmly at just barely 20 years old. The reality was far from the happy family life I had envisioned. Listening to her made me reflect deeply. Emily never had loud clashes with her mother. It was mostly Linda unilaterally attacking her with words. When my mill or I intervened, it only made Linda more heated up. And the more heated up her mother got, the more silent Emily became. I wonder how much she had to swallow her words and feelings, enduring silently.
I think bad conversations should be avoided.
Bad conversations.
Yay, like those that only cause arguments or escalate emotions. It's better not to have them. As my French improved, my social circle widened, but that was to have good relationships, not to outtalk others. Language is there to understand others. Just because we speak the same language doesn't mean we should say everything. Dad, you must have been holding back, too.
Being consoled by my daughter, who had flown from France, I felt a lack of faith as a father. But it also felt like seeing the fruits of my labor.
So, Dad, keep up with your Vietnamese.
Her encouragement boosted my spirits. With a newfound resolve to integrate more into the local culture, my life here became more fulfilling. Curious Emily wanted to explore Vietnam. It expanded my world. The commemoration party began with the president's speech and a history presentation, followed by a meal. Just as I returned to the table with my food,
Long time no see.
suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind. It was Linda. Why are you here?
Haha, truly. Even after our separation, I guess I'm still connected to this company. My current husband works here, too, in research and development. He's a key figure in this company.
As Linda said this, Lane arrived with 2 glasses of champagne. When the woman in the iodine appeared, Linda's gaze moved from top to bottom, her expression gradually shifting to one of smug amusement.
You did well, finding a spouse in Vietnam. Of course they'd want to follow you back to the US, a developed country. Seems like your trip was worth it, but maybe you could have found someone younger, right? There are plenty of those here in the US.
It's nice to meet you. I am Lane.
Lane introduced herself quietly.
I'm Michael's wife. My husband has always appreciated you.
Lane displayed her fluent English and confident manner. All of Lane seemed to unsettle Linda.
Oh, yes, likewise.
She stammered, and then a man approached. It was Kaylee, the one Linda boasted about from R&D.
What are you doing here?
As he said this and turned around, the glass slipped from his hand and fell. It hit the carpeted floor with a thud, and splashes of beer flew onto the hem of my pants.
Oh my, what happened? Are you okay?
Linda hurried to pick up the cup and looked up at the man. Kaylee was silent, just staring at Lane. Lane didn't stand up to greet this time. However, she kept looking at him.
It's just beer. It won't stain much, right?
Let's just eat.
Okay, let's go, Kaylee.
Linda left a fallen glass on our table and disappeared with Kaylee to another seat. Are you okay? I asked Lane, and she smiled, squatting down where Kaylee had stood.
How about you? Are you really okay?
I'm fine. It's nothing serious. Let's eat. I suggested for us to eat, and we enjoyed our meal together. Throughout the event, various colleagues of mine approached us, making for a bustling round of greetings and introductions. I could see Kaylee glancing over from the crowd, but I deliberately ignored him. Lying never looked back at him either. After a while, two radiant figures appeared before me. It was Emily and Ho. Emily was in pink, and Ho was in a deep young grass-colored iodine.
There's so much delicious food. Look, I got greedy.
There's char siu as well.
They exclaimed with a big smile and joined our table. The sight of the two young women drew everyone's attention. Linda and Kaylee, this time, were looking over in astonishment. Emily had returned after her graduation and is now working for a company here in the U.S. My mill had moved into a care facility, and the old house had changed hands. Emily was living independently. She often visited Lying and me, but she never met up with Linda. I wasn't sure what Linda's current husband had told her, but Kaylee was just an eternal deputy manager. There were colleagues at R&D who had attended the wedding between Linda and me. Kaylee had always been problematic. Office romance, broken engagements, infidelity after marriage, and then divorce. And it was a colleague who informed me that the woman he was involved with resembled Linda. It seemed he was quite flustered because he hadn't known about our divorce. It was probably Kaylee who suggested to Linda that my trip to Vietnam was a demotion. Ending up marrying Linda after all his troubles with women might have been the twist of fate Emily talked about. I felt neither anger nor sorrow. I think it would have been worse if I had gone to Vietnam alone while being still married, without knowing it. Emily met Ho, a student from Vietnam, in France, and they hit it off. After Ho returned to Vietnam, she visited both me and her there. Being 4 years older, she must be like a dependable older sister to Emily, who has no siblings. In Vietnam, Emily introduced me to Ho, and through her, I met her mother, Lying. I was already acquainted with Lying from our language classes, so this connection brought us closer. The daughters were pleasantly surprised and happy. Ho, who mastered English and French, returned to Vietnam and secured a job at a multinational corporation due to her language skills. Ho cared for her mother as if compensating for past hardships. She gave many gifts to her and also took her on trips abroad. She took her to Thailand, Cambodia, Singapore, etc. From Vietnam, it only takes an hour or two by plane to these neighboring countries. Lying, who had worked solely for Ho, found herself both delighted and perplexed by these sudden travels. It seemed Ho wanted to make her mother happy, who had lived without luxuries. Ho's filial actions inspired Emily to be exceedingly kind to me. There were times when she brought ingredients from France and cooked French cuisine in Vietnam. Going out to eat with both families and being invited to Lyon's home made me believe that it was their presence that allowed us to get married. Watching my daughters, who conversed in French in France, now learning and occasionally mixing Vietnamese and English, was heartwarming. This time, Ho visited New York for the first time. They stayed at our place, but Emily acted as a guide. After a hearty meal, the two of them said they were going out for drinks, left their change of clothes with me, and headed out into the night. Afterward, we slowly stood up from our tea. Walking through the hotel lobby, Kaylee suddenly called out,
Lion.
Turning around, he was out of breath. He must have made some excuse like needing to go to the bathroom to leave Linda and follow us.
When did you come to the U.S.? Are you married? Where do you live?
He bombarded her with questions, to which Lying, in a calm yet dignified voice, responded.
What do you want with me now?
Kaylee was at a loss for words, rooted to the spot. Lying turned her back and started walking away. I supported Lyon's back and we stepped outside. Shall we take a walk? Thinking she might want to calm down, I asked, and she quietly linked her arm with mine, and we walked through the night streets together. You must be really tired from all the pretense. She just shook her head at what I said, without uttering a word. As we walked in silence, Lane suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Before I could finish asking her, she crouched down. Rushing over, I embraced her, and she began to cry softly. It must have been hard. Helping her to stand, she sobbed, perhaps releasing years of resentment and longing. Being spared from showing her miserable side to Kaylee might have signified the end of a painful past.
Thank you,
she said quietly as we got home. For what?
for everything.
Everything.
I'm happy now, so let's not dwell on the past.
She chose her words carefully and then smiled. I feel the same way. If I were still alone, I wouldn't have attended today. It's because you are with me that I could go. I'm grateful for that. We were able to heal our past wounds through this encounter. It's remarkable how two people from different countries and languages could come together like this. Kaylee, unlike me, was sent to Vietnam when he was younger. His stay wasn't long, but that's where he met Lane. She worked in a restaurant catering to tourists. He took a liking to her, frequented the restaurant, and deepened the relationship, claiming he would work in Vietnam for a long time. Then, a year later, he left without a word. He probably intended to do so from the start. He left no business card and canceled his phone line. He broke up with her as soon as she announced her pregnancy. Lane was just 18 when she entered society. She ended up giving birth to Ho alone, without any way to cope. She left her daughter with her mother and sought Kaylee while working. But there was no clue or lead to be found. The apartment she heard was a company dormitory, had no American residents. The building where she was told his office was located had no such company. She realized her naivety. She had heard that American people were polite and kind-hearted. Lane was aware of the arrogance often shown by people from developed countries, a trait that was likely even more pronounced 30 years ago. Kaylee wasn't like that. That's why she was drawn to him. However, it was all a facade. She was left behind as if she never existed. Lane vowed to give Ho the education she never had. Lane thought, Ho must not live a life like hers. Even in a poor country, if one is capable, others will not treat them with disdain. Lane raised Ho with these thoughts. From a young age, Ho was taught English and French and sent to the university on a scholarship which included studying abroad. It seems that watching Ho grow up was what sustained Lane's heart. How deep were the wounds caused by the betrayal? As a fellow American, it was unbearable. The sudden resurgence of Kaylee in Lane's heart happened while looking at the company's website. I was casually watching the New Year's company event. Lane, bringing tea, caught sight of him on the monitor. We had already married, and Lane had decided to move to USA. In such a situation, memories from 30 years ago come back to life. I came to know Kaylee's betrayal for the first time. Still, we decided to attend the anniversary party together. I wanted to show everything with pride, how we were a couple, that Lane was a Vietnamese woman, and how well she had raised Ho. Lane is not a pitiful woman abandoned by a man, but my wife who has raised her child well and maintains a stable home. Emily felt the same way.
We are one family of 4. Let's show that to everyone.
It was also Emily who suggested wearing the IO dye. We were able to showcase what we had achieved in life, and it was a proud night. The next day, Linda contacted me.
I want to meet and talk.
What's the matter this time? You want to bill me for dry cleaning or something?
Don't play dumb. Please come after work tomorrow. I need to talk to you.
She asked me to meet her at a cafe. It was typical of her to call all the shots.
Who's that woman?
Linda asked bluntly as soon as we sat down. She's family. You and your husband came together, right? It's the same for us.
You must know something. Tell me. Yesterday, my husband left me behind and chased after you too, didn't he? I know about it.
Then ask Kaylee if you want to know. Are you keeping secrets even though you're a married couple?
Just tell me.
It seemed Kaylee didn't spill the beans. When I told her everything, she blamed me for bringing lying to such a place.
Are you implying she's going to start demanding alimony or child support out of the blue now? Is she trying to extort us by showing up in public like this?
Did Kaylee say that? I barely controlled my voice when I said that. I might have shouted if we weren't in public. My intensity made Linda flinch. Don't play dumb. You're the one who approached us in public, remember? We just want to live our lives without any connection to you two. She doesn't need Kale's help. She's raised her daughter splendidly. Even Emily looks up to her. I'm proud of her too. You left me behind when I was transferred overseas. You couldn't bring yourself to go with me, and you ran away. I still hate being seen that way. So yesterday was a good opportunity for you to see the person I've become. There's no reason for us to avoid public attention. We have nothing to hide. You wanted to show off your current husband. Well, if that's all you wanted, then be satisfied with that.
You're so cunning, dragging Emily into this.
Linda said that with a sulky tone. Emily knows how difficult life overseas can be, so she's always been concerned about me. Have you ever done anything like that? Even when Emily went to Paris as a high school student, she went willingly. And what did you do? You just left her to her own devices. You simply said she should study hard because you spent a lot of money sending her there. She told me that's all you ever said.
You've always used Emily to treat me like an afterthought and sidelined me, haven't you? And now what's this? Marrying your colleague's ex-girlfriend without even knowing her? Or is it a jab at me? Are you planning to play the role of her daughter's father since you know who her real father is? Look at yourself. I'm the one who should be ashamed of you.
That's why our daughter keeps her distance from you, because you always live life centered around yourself. My words seem to sharpen Linda's gaze. Isn't it always like this with you? You never understand anyone else's feelings. If you lack the ability to understand others, shouldn't you at least try to imagine and think about it? And what about lying being a woman from the past? How would you feel if the same happened to our daughter? Could you just sit idly by? Your current husband is that kind of man. How would you feel now that you know he did something like that? Anyone would normally speak up about it, wouldn't they? If your husband betrayed someone and caused them suffering, shouldn't you, as his wife, feel remorse? All you think about is alimony, threats, and self-preservation. I'm utterly disgusted. Is this your own selfishness, or is it a message from Kaylee? You and he make quite the pair. I stood up and started walking, but then I turned back suddenly. From now on, stay away from us completely. Tell him the same. He's cut off everything and ran away. Whether it's regret or remorse, I don't know, but my wife wants nothing to do with it. There are no plans to meet or let our daughters meet any of you. Is that clear? It's your problem now. You can dig up the past, be disappointed, or do whatever you want. It has nothing to do with us. Even if there are rumors at work, we're not involved. Deal with it yourself. like the mess you've made.
And Emily, give me her contact information. You lied about her getting a job over there. I didn't hear anything about her being in the US. What's going on? She didn't even report back to me, her mother, about returning to the country. Are you behind this?
I couldn't help but sigh. You always play the victim. As a mother, did you ever try to reach out or initiate contact? You only push your agenda when it suits you. And then when our daughter starts avoiding you and you can't get in touch, you blame her. With that attitude, she will never contact you again. I headed outside towards the subway station. I had to get home quickly. Today, I was supposed to cook Vietnamese food with Liane and Ho. If I'm late, Emily will be upset with me. As I was being swayed on the subway, I remembered Kaylee from yesterday. Why did he approach us? Was it out of nostalgia for Liane? Or did he want to see Ho? Despite the risk of rumors spreading among the employees, he still called out to us in public. He must not have forgotten the past. Did he think Liane would feel nostalgic about him? But there is no past that can be recovered. That's going to be the path of his life. Poor guy. The subway doors opened, and I hurriedly got off the platform and rushed up the stairs. I never realized how happy it would be to come home. It's almost childish. In the second half of my one and only life, I'm savoring the happiness of the present once again.
The new director, John, recently joined our product development department. At first, I thought he was a hard-working young man, but it turned out he couldn't grasp the situation on the ground, pushing us into excessive labor. At this rate, my colleagues will collapse. Taking a bold step, I protested, and John twisted his face and retorted,
So you were the one leaking the product's confidential information. A traitor with only a high school diploma is fired.
After being rushed out of the company by John, I stood outside the building for a while, but then I gathered myself and called Harry, the CEO of our company. When I explained the situation, Harry gasped and pressed me for answers.
What about the patents if you leave the company?
The company will go bankrupt in a month without my patents, but since a high school dropout is useless, I guess you'll have to manage.
Wait.
Harry urgently called me to his office, wanting to speak in person. There, an unexpected person was waiting for me. My name is Tom Green. I'm a 32-year-old company employee. After graduating from high school, I immediately started working at a local factory. Because, ever since my father fell seriously ill and was hospitalized when I was in elementary school, my family has lived in poverty. I joined the local factory hoping to support my family financially, but it was a small factory and went bankrupt after 8 years. Feeling lost about what to do next, someone reached out to me. It was Mary Brown, who worked for a client of the factory. Mary, 3 years my senior and holding a respectable position, helped me get a job at a company that I wouldn't have passed the document screening for with my educational background, as it was a major corporation. Since then, I've worked hard for the past 9 years, grateful to her. I was always interested in creating new things, so I was happy to be assigned to the product development department. But initially, as a high school graduate and mid-career hire, I was anxious about fitting in with my highly educated colleagues at a large corporation. However, once I started working, I realized that in the field of product development, education and age didn't matter at all. As we discussed how to improve products, I naturally became part of the team, even though it was awkward at first. As I threw myself into product development, by the time our first product was completed, I found myself at the center of the team. From then on, as I worked tirelessly every day, I started to receive various consultations and began to take on more innovative and bold developments. With each passing day, our team's unity strengthened, and some of the products we developed became socially popular and turned into a series. Now, that series has become a flagship product supporting the company. As long as this series exists, the company's sales are said to be stable, and I finally felt the weight off my shoulders. Was this my way of repaying the company and Mary for their help? Thinking this, I felt proud and confident, backed by experience, as I devoted myself to work alongside my colleagues. Thus, our workplace became completely fulfilling, and we were leading satisfied daily lives, something we hadn't anticipated at all. Just one person has drastically changed the future of the company. That person is John Brown, who was newly appointed as the director of the development department due to a personnel change. John is just 30 years old, younger than me. He has never belonged to the development department, nor has any experience in development. The reason he became the director is because he's the son of the company's CEO. From what I've heard from my colleagues, it seems he's being rotated through all the departments to gain experience in preparation to eventually take over the company. He has worked in general affairs, sales, and now, it appears the development department is his next stop. Initially, we welcomed him, thinking the next CEO wanted to learn about the field work with his own eyes. But that illusion quickly shattered.
Now that I'm here, I expect to see a significant increase in sales. The way things have been done up to now has been too soft, resulting in too much waste and failure.
On his first day during the morning assembly, John declared this while crossing his arms in front of us. True to his word, from that day on, we were relentlessly pushed to develop products that seemed profitable. John had us create sales charts down to the penny to keep track of sales in real time. If we didn't meet the target amount he had set, he'd yell at us for not trying hard enough. The abrupt change in direction left us bewildered. Up until now, the development department held meetings with all employees to exchange ideas before developing new products, working together without distinction between superiors and subordinates. But now, we're so driven by sales figures that we hardly have time for meetings, let alone casual greetings. In just 1 month since John arrived, the development department has turned into a tense and stifling place. Seeing my colleagues' gloomy faces, I resolved to confront John and change the current situation. This is because both the senior employees and the younger staff were exhausted, barely managing to meet their daily quotas. It's hard to come up with good product ideas with a rigid mind. Above all, I didn't want the workplace I've cherished so much to be ruined any further. John, I need to talk to you. Could you please reconsider the work format? If this continues, the morale of the employees will drop, and we won't last.
If you have time to worry about trivial matters, get to work.
That was all John replied, dismissing my concerns and piling more work on me. In that case, I decided to focus on product development, aiming to build up enough achievements to avoid any complaints. But no matter how many proposals I submitted, John wouldn't even give them a proper look, rejecting them without reason or demanding nonsensical revisions. It seemed like he was just shooting down my ideas on a whim. He would order revisions one day, only to discard them the next, making this chaotic approach a daily routine. Even if by some miracle he approved a presentation, he'd demand an impossible schedule for completion. After enduring over time beyond our limits to finally launch a product, all the achievements and recognition would be claimed by John. All the hard work, faced with constant complaints, yet reaping no rewards when the results were snatched away. As we repeated this demoralizing cycle, the employees' motivation steadily declined. This situation worsened, and as we struggled, our competing companies began to outperform us. Products that we should have launched were being developed one after another by our competitors. Among them were products strikingly similar to those John had criticized, launched by the competing company and achieving strong sales. Facing such irrational circumstances and a hopeless work environment, employees, especially the younger ones, started leaving the company one by one. Now, the only ones left are those who can't afford to quit because they have families to support. But far from being alarmed by this abnormal situation, John was convinced that employees who remained wouldn't easily leave, pushing an even harsher environment on us. Working till late night after night became the norm. Additionally, tasks that were originally supposed to be handled by John started being assigned to us as part of our job. As quitting time approached, John would arrogantly throw documents on my desk.
Finish these documents too. The deadline is tomorrow morning.
He commanded, then left us behind to clock out on time himself. In the end, we, the minimal staff left in the office, were forced to handle nearly twice the amount of work as before. I pleaded for at least hiring new employees to replace those who had resigned, but it was ultimately denied with the insistence that the work was still getting managed, so no new hires were necessary.
Those who left were incompetent employees who couldn't even handle this level of work. You guys are capable, so you should naturally be able to handle this much.
As rumored before, John had absolutely no experience working in the development department. Whether he was aware of it or not, he seemed to have no realization of the unreasonable demands he was placing on us. His poor instructions did not cease thereafter. We were worked like slaves every day, drained of the energy to even think of rebelling against the director. Seeing my colleagues' faces of despair, I reconsidered that this situation couldn't continue. Honestly, our skills in releasing hit products are quite high. We would be welcomed at any other company. I even considered resigning en masse and moving to a new company, but there was no guarantee of re-employment, and the concern for living expenses in the meantime was worrying. Moreover, voluntarily resigning meant a significant difference in the retirement benefits from the company, which was another issue. Furthermore, considering John's past behavior, it was unlikely he would let us go without a fuss. He would surely find ways to harass or obstruct us. Considering all this, I reluctantly concluded that staying at this workplace was the wiser choice. If we decided to stay, we should at least strive to improve the working environment. Resolved to make a stand, I steeled myself for a serious talk with John.
Calling me out must mean you have something incredibly important to discuss. If you use this as an excuse to slack off, you won't get off easy.
John, upon entering the conference room, plopped down heavily onto a chair, making no effort to conceal his displeasure. Even though he agreed to the discussion, given his demeanor, I had no idea how much of what I said he would actually take to heart.
I'm not as free as you non-management employees. I have a meeting with an external party soon, so make it quick. Well, you have 3 minutes.
He ordered from his high horse, but we were anything but free. On the contrary, due to John's demands, we were in a constant race against deadlines, barely managing to get any sleep. John, it's time to improve the working methods within the department. The way you're directing things is harming the company's profits.
What are you talking about? I don't recall forcing anyone to do anything.
He feigned ignorance with a nonchalant face, which made my blood boil. Continuing in this state, the employees couldn't possibly keep working. The company would collapse, yet what was John thinking? We're all working overtime every day, reaching our limits. At least stop taking the credit for our work and recognize the employees' achievements. I pleaded, despite feeling a seething anger. I couldn't stand John's attitude, but I couldn't bear to see my exhausted colleagues anymore. However, all I got back was John's mocking laughter.
You all chose to work here. The company pays you a salary for your labor. What's the problem?
Everything is the problem. If this continues, all the employees will collapse. We've reached our limit. And hadn't you noticed we're being outperformed by our competitors? I tried my best to persuade John, showing him documents I had prepared. Recently, products very similar to the series our company had been releasing were all being developed by our competing company. Even after I showed John the document summarizing the fact, he didn't bat an eyelid. While our development team has been suffering under John's oppressive work environment, the competing company has been steadily increasing sales. It was impossible for him not to see the current state, yet John completely ignored my opinions.
Your 3 minutes are up,
he declared, ending the conversation and walking out of the meeting room, leaving me behind. I sighed deeply, left alone in the meeting room. It seemed the only option left was to take this matter to someone higher up. With that thought, I went home, but the situation drastically changed the next day. The next morning, as I headed to work, pondering how to convey our troubles to the upper management, I noticed John unusually present early in the morning. Surprised, I saw him walk straight up to me with a beaming smile.
Tom, you don't need to come to the office anymore.
Shocked by his abrupt statement, I was at a loss for words. But John, looking pleased with himself, thrust some documents at me. In his hand was the comparison chart I had handed over in the meeting room the day before, comparing our company with the competing company.
I thought it was strange that similar products were being released by our competing company. It turns out you were the one leaking the information, Tom.
What are you talking about? I asked, completely confused by his accusation. Then John just smirked and announced,
You leaked information. That's a serious betrayal to the company. You're a high school dropout, right? After all we've done to employ you, you repay us with betrayal.
Being accused of something I had no memory of, all I could do was shake my head in denial. Stunned, John shot me a glare and spat out his words with a twisted scowl.
Even though you're older than me, you're still just a non-management employee, harboring resentment against the company. To think someone with just a high school education should be grateful for the chance to work here, yet causes trouble for the company, is unbelievable.
But even if you say that, Trying to speak up, he rudely cut me off to enforce his point.
Slowing your work and now betraying the company. A high school graduate like you is fired. Pack your things and leave before you get sued.
Normally, even if he's my superior and the CEO's son, John shouldn't have the authority to fire me. But in that moment, shock, my mind couldn't function, and I was hurried out of the office by John. Standing in front of the building for a while, it took me about 10 minutes to gradually comprehend the situation. As much as I wanted to stay, as long as John is in the development department, I would likely face the same harassment over and over. Thinking resignation was my only option, yet not satisfied with being forced out this way. After a moment of thought, I pulled out my phone and reached out to a certain individual.
Let's see. You're Tom Green, right? What's the deal with you reaching out to me?
The person who answered was Harry Brown, the CEO of the company. I briefly recounted the events that had just unfolded, concluding with, "For the reasons mentioned, I have decided to resign from the company." Through the phone, I could hear Harry gasp.
What foolishness are you talking about? What about the patents if you leave the company?
Without my patents, the company will go bankrupt in a month. But since a high school dropout is useless, I guess you'll have to manage.
Wait.
Harry was muttering stuff like that can't be true or there's no way. Then he began to accuse me with a strong tone.
No matter how much you claim the product you developed is yours, the patent rights should belong to the company.
No, I have a contract stating that all products I develop have patent rights belonging to me. Employees who invent products in the workplace have the right to receive patents. Unless the right to receive patents is transferred from the inventor to the company in advance and specified in the work rules, the rights belong to the employee. Therefore, when an inventor leaves the company, like in this case, it is necessary to transfer the rights, but I certainly didn't feel like going through the procedure. Upon hearing my response, Harry began bustling around on the phone and then started speaking loudly to someone. And then, insisting on speaking with me directly, he called me into the CEO's office. Just after being kicked out of the company, I stepped back into it as instructed and opened the door to the CEO's office. Inside, waiting for me was Mary, who had brought me into this company. She is actually Harry's real daughter, the sister of John, and currently the executive director of this company. In front of Harry and Mary, I explained everything that had happened from the beginning again. As the conversation progressed, Harry started sweating profusely and, conversely, Mary's face turned pale with a serious expression. And then, she said something unexpected.
In the first place, wasn't John made the head of the product development department to learn the know-how from Tom here?
According to John's report, there was no problem at all. In fact, I thought it was sufficient evidence since the sales of the product development department were increasing.
Sharp criticism from Mary flies at Harry, who is nervously making excuses.
You'll understand if you listen to Tom's report now. The development department is currently in a very difficult situation.
As Harry completely slumped, Mary turned around and deeply apologized to me.
I didn't know it had come to this. I'm truly sorry. As the executive director of this company and as John's sister, the CEO's daughter, I'm really sorry.
It's not something for you to apologize for, Mary. I instinctively shook my head, but Mary stubbornly persisted.
No, Both my father and I are still responsible for the actions of the employees. It's unacceptable that John would arbitrarily fire Tom.
He probably didn't know about the patent issue because he thought of me as just a high school graduate non-management employee. But I believe his actions were reckless. It's likely that John got angry because I didn't obey him and decided to expel me as a warning. However, if I were to leave the company, the popular series I hold patents for would no longer be marketable. If that were to happen, the loss to this company, which lost its flagship product, would be immeasurable. As I pondered over this, Mary once again apologized to me.
I'm truly sorry about what happened this time. Please, won't you stay with this company?
So, does that mean I won't be fired? Just to make sure, when I asked, Mary let out a tired sigh.
Originally, John had no right to fire Tom. Perhaps he misunderstood his position as the CEO's son.
However, the situation took an unexpected turn afterwards. What was thought to be John's unilateral decision in this incident was later revealed to be an unbelievable situation through investigation. It turns out that John had been poached by a competing company and caused this trouble. Mary explained the situation in detail to me, as I couldn't believe that he, who was supposed to become the next CEO as the CEO's son, would do such a thing.
I never imagined this. I had never even considered competing for the presidency.
What do you mean? Apparently, Harry had decided to make Mary the next CEO at the same time as John's transfer. Mary, who has been working by the CEO's side for years and is currently the executive director of the company. So, Harry was preparing to appoint Mary as his successor, but John was not okay with that. John was resentful that Mary, his own sister, was expected to be the new CEO instead of him, setting aside the fact that he's the current CEO's own son. And then, it seems a competing company approached him, trying to poach him.
I was told by them, if you'd rather work under your sister for life, you might as well just shut down the company. They even said they'd welcome me with open arms if I siphoned off talented personnel and potentially lucrative products.
John confessed to such facts. To support that, it was revealed that former employees who had left the company had been scouted by the competing company almost immediately. In fact, many former employees are now working for the competing company. It was John who had been passing on the list of retirees and information to the competing company.
So basically, John was connected to the competing company. That's probably why he didn't stop such reckless orders even when the development department was in such a tense atmosphere.
Still, even if he's the CEO's son, it's too elaborate for John to have done it alone. Mary slowly nodded in agreement with my opinion.
There are probably some people in the upper management who were involved as well, which I haven't been able to fully investigate. It's strange enough that, as the executive director, I had no idea about this situation at all.
So, does that mean someone was hiding information along the way? Those who were connected to the competing company in the upper management must have been thinking of undermining the management whenever they had the chance. Expelling employees and leaking information to outsiders are serious breaches of trust towards the company and are unmistakable crimes. Even without that, John's actions can only be described as atrocious. I couldn't believe he would bankrupt the company just because he was excluded as a candidate for the next CEO.
Perhaps if you had quit Tom, the plan would have been complete. So maybe they focused on you for harassment beyond John's expectations. But Tom has contributed a lot to this company, more than John imagined.
So are you saying he insisted on firing me on pretextual grounds because I didn't submit my resignation letter? Indeed, I was planning to submit my resignation letter. In that case, I would have left this company according to John's plan, under the guise of voluntary resignation.
Tom holds the patents for our company's popular series. If you were to leave the company, the sales would plummet, and the damage would be immeasurable.
Mary furrowed her brows and continued.
It seems like the competing company were planning to approach you as soon as you left the company. They probably would have reached out within a week.
I have no intention of accepting their offer. Frankly, I'm annoyed that they think I'd easily switch to a competing company. At least while I have Mary, my benefactor, around, I have no intention of letting the patent be used by another company. Those who plotted to make me leave couldn't understand such feelings, nor could they even imagine them. Mary's lips, which had been tightly sealed all along, finally curved into a relieved smile.
I know Tom is a sincere person.
Just to confirm again, I'm still allowed to stay in this company, right? When I asked, Mary's eyes widened in surprise.
Of course. I won't allow Tom to be fired. Besides, neither a dismissal notice nor a resignation letter has been submitted.
Finally, I let out a sigh of relief at Mary's words. Thank you for your continued support.
The feeling is mutual. But first, we need to clean up the company. It's going to be quite an undertaking.
Mary smiled gently, but her eyes were filled with determination. From there, things progressed rapidly. While John was in a good mood, thinking I had resigned, Mary gathered trustworthy employees and shared information. Meanwhile, John left the office as usual at the end of the day and went out for dinner. At the dinner, the upper management and employees from other companies who were planning to destroy our company were celebrating the success of their plan. Mary and her team, who were secretly tailing them, were able to identify the members who betrayed the company on the spot. Afterward, Mary and her team thoroughly investigated the cases that the traitors had been involved with in the past. They eventually uncovered evidence of unjust removal and tampering with company documents, revealing that unfairly transferred personnel and technology had leaked to a considerable extent. With all the preparations in place, the showdown was set for the start of the following week. Some of the employees and executives who came to work were taken aback by the unusual atmosphere pervading the office. An unprecedented personnel announcement was made by Harry. Posted in the lobby, a notice listed the names of those who had defected to the competing company, including John at the forefront. Among them were some big names, and everyone turned pale and trembled at the penalties being handed down one after another.
Why am I being fired? I'm the CEO's son.
John, who received the harshest penalty, spat out in disbelief and ranted. Given his deliberate leak of information, it was only natural for him to receive the harshest punishment. He was disciplined for violating the confidentiality agreement. Standing in front of him, furious, was his father, Harry.
I know everything you've done. You've really done something terrible, you foolish son.
It's your fault, Dad. How could you shuffle me around the company and then make Mary the next CEO?
John was red-faced with anger, but Harry only looked sad and lowered his eyebrows.
You can't just become CEO overnight without knowing anything about the company. I was giving you the chance to learn about the whole company by experiencing different departments.
But
Even after hearing the reason, John continued to complain, prompting a sharp rebuke from Harry.
Thinking you could become CEO just because you're my son is naive. That's why you could do something like sell out the company without valuing the employees.
why did you?
It must have finally dawned on him that their entire scheme had been exposed. John looked around desperately, searching for an escape, but he was surrounded by employees giving him cold stares. Realizing there was no way out, John's face turned pale, and he started shaking uncontrollably.
What you did is unforgivable. You're fired, with disciplinary dismissal. And of course, no retirement benefits whatsoever.
John collapsed to the floor and began to cry shamelessly, while other employees involved in the wrongdoing stood frozen in shock or sweated profusely in panic. A grim atmosphere enveloped the place, but there was no sympathy to be had. They had to atone for what they had done. In this way, the development department, which had been thrown into chaos since John took over, somehow managed to return to its original state. And so, I reluctantly accepted the promotion offer that I had turned down many times before. I still loved working with machines on the floor as a rank-and-file employee. But I had learned the hard way that I couldn't be a stopgap as a non-management employee if something like this happened again. Considering the future, I quickly became a department head. The one who was most delighted by this outcome was Mary, my benefactor.
It was impossible for Tom, who has developed numerous popular series and obtained patents, to remain a non-management employee. I'm counting on you to support our company and me from now on.
Mary, who smiled warmly, had just been appointed the new CEO, succeeding the former CEO Harry, and was now capably running the company. The development department, greatly reduced in numbers due to John's actions, saw a surge in applications when it started recruiting anew. Surprisingly, many of the former employees came back. Upon asking, it seems they had held off on finding new jobs after quitting. Though they had offers to join the competing company, the timing was too coincidental, raising suspicions. Thanks to many talented employees returning, the development department quickly resumed its usual activities. As for John, he was indeed welcomed by the competing company as per the contract. However, with the plan failing and our company still standing, the promised executive position was revoked. In addition, they probably wanted to steer clear of further trouble with our company. He was given mundane tasks as a dead-end employee, and he couldn't bear it, so he submitted his resignation right away. He left with a declaration of achieving greater things, but ended up hopping from one part-time job to another. Still, it's a fact that our company's information leaked to a competing company. We've suffered considerable damage, with several products using our technology released. But the new CEO Mary calmly proceeded with legal action against the former employees for leaking corporate secrets. And she was not only cracking down on wrongdoing, but also actively spearheading internal reforms. She reviewed compliance thoroughly, revamped employee training systems, and established a merit-based promotion system regardless of education or age. This reform especially motivated the new employees, who were full of energy. Their fresh ideas, combined with my long-standing technical skills, led to the development of innovative new products. Constantly adjusting our product plans to fit the times, we've been able to launch even more successful products than before. Thanks to this, the information leaked to our competitors became obsolete. Under the leadership of the new CEO Mary, our company continues to grow every day.
Tom, I'm truly grateful you're here. Would you stay with me forever?
I'd be happy to stay with you, Mary. Expressing my genuine feelings, she smiled happily. Since then, we've grown closer, both professionally and personally. Meeting Mary was the greatest happiness of my life. Without her, I wouldn't be who I am today. We plan to continue supporting and encouraging each other, living a fulfilling life together.
The old man who wants to get his retirement benefits is fired. We don't need noisy nuisances like you around.
It seems that William, our new president, didn't appreciate my way of handling work and sarcastically told me to leave. I'm not staying in this company just for the retirement pay. But to William, who just became the president, someone like me who knows the company better and is respected by the employees must have been an annoyance. It was clear what would happen to the factory if I left. Still, if he insists I leave, then I will resign. Understood, I'll leave everything to you. I have deep feelings for this company where I've worked so long, but I can no longer work under such an arrogant president like him. Since I'm retiring in 6 months anyway, leaving now makes no difference. Though the employees tried to stop me, I resigned. After this, William will surely experience hell in this factory. He will learn the hard way that managing the factory is no easy task. I am Daniel, 64 years old. I work at Cloud's Machine Manufacturing, assembling machinery. At this age, I have never been in management and am still a rank-and-file employee. That's because I know taking on a management role in the factory means facing a lot of responsibilities and difficulties. Without overtime pay, there's a lot to do, including dealing with troubles, checking documents for audits, leading junior employees, and so on. Also, I love product development, so I declined offers for promotion and continued working in development. After many years, our respected president, Henry, decided to retire. He was the president of Cloud's Machine Manufacturing. President Henry was a respected figure who provided guidance on work matters and facilitated the operations in sales and manufacturing. As he turned 70, he finally retired. Being one of his longtime associates, I had a drink with Henry at a bar for the last time.
Are you really okay with this? The terms would be much better from now on.
It's fine. I'm better suited for development.
I see. It's regrettable, but I respect your decision. You've been excellent in development. Keep supporting our company.
With that as our final goodbye, Henry retired. The office was filled with a somber atmosphere on his last days since everyone adored Henry.
It's sad to think of the company without him.
I wonder how we'll manage.
After Henry left, the mood in the office was gloomy. However, the employees couldn't stay down for long. They decided to support the company that he had always backed. Thus, everyone regained their spirit and started working again, but their resolve would soon be challenged in an unexpected way. The new president turned out to be terribly arrogant.
From today, I am the president of Cloud's Machine Manufacturing. You all better work hard to contribute to this factory.
William made this speech. The son of Henry introduced himself, now apparently 41 years old. From his first words, it was clear he was only interested in immediate profits, without considering the employee's circumstances. Thinking about what would happen under his presidency, we all grimaced.
Is it really okay to leave it to someone like him?
Jack, from the manufacturing department, asked me. He is 55 years old, and we are relatively close in age, so we get along well. I wonder. Well, we just have to do our best. This was the first time William visited this company. He might have worked in a similar industry before, but he likely knew little about how things worked at Cloud's machine manufacturing. So rather than relying entirely on him, it seemed better for us to support him in running the company. I knew enough about how the factory operated to manage things. That day, as the eldest in the factory, I went to the manufacturing department first and gave directions to the employees. For now, here's what we're manufacturing today. Please get to your stations and carry on with your work. Take breaks as usual. Although I'm in development, I make sure to regularly interact with the sales and manufacturing staff. Therefore, I fully understand the manufacturing department's work and am trusted by them. Upon receiving my instructions, the employees nodded and moved to their respective stations. As I watched him leave, I was about to head to the sales department, but then William, the president, showed up.
Hey you, getting a bit too cocky, aren't you? Who gave you the permission to issue orders?
Caught off guard by his hostile tone, I was taken aback. That's not.
Don't go issuing orders behind my back. This is my factory. Someone who isn't even in management should know their place.
Yes, I'm sorry. Indeed, William is the top dog in this factory now. So, I regretted not checking with him first before issuing instructions to the departments. However, consulting him after the speech with such disdain was tough. Then, William, I'd like to discuss today's strategy, if I may.
That's okay. I'll give the orders. No need for an old-timer like you to do anything.
Okay, got it. Please proceed. William then headed towards the sales department. I wondered if he could really give instructions, being so new to the factory, but if he says so, I have no right to interject. I might have been too eager just after the president change, but after all, I am just a rank-and-file employee. For now, I decided to focus on what I should do and went back to the development department. But things weren't going to be that easy. While I was focusing on development, William had been issuing some outrageous orders to manufacturing and sales.
What's this order? Producing 500 units right now is impossible.
No breaks. We are not machines.
There's no way we can meet such sales targets.
We never had to do overtime before, but recently we've been staying late all the time. Why?
At first, everyone tried to diligently follow William's orders, but the unreasonable demands and continuous overtime began to wear them down. And soon, grievances started to surface from the exhausted employees. Moreover, there was a growing conflict between the sales and manufacturing departments, each trying to protect their own interests. And then, in the midst of these disputes, an employee made a shocking statement.
It would be 100 times easier if Daniel were giving the orders.
Hearing this, William flew into a rage.
What's so good about that old-timer? I'm the president now. You all should just follow my lead.
Intervening in such a situation would likely just add fuel to the fire. However, if I left William's conflict with the employees unchecked, the factory might fall apart. Unable to stand by any longer, I stepped into the fray. "Excuse me, William."
What, Daniel? I'm busy, so make it quick.
"Well, would you like to discuss together about how we can run the factory moving forward?" It's understandable that he doesn't know how to give instructions or run the factory right after joining. Perhaps it's just his pride as the president's son that keeps him from asking for help. Then I thought I could help him now.
No way. I'd rather not rely on an old-timer like you. You're just clinging to this company for the retirement benefits, right?
But faced with such a wildly incorrect accusation, I was astounded. Retirement benefits. I'm not staying at this company just for the money. I want to continue developing and contributing.
I hate it when people spout such idealistic nonsense. We're talking business here. We need to produce more products to make a profit. Get it?
Trying to extend my helping hand only to be rebuffed in such a dismissive manner left me speechless. The factory is clearly on the brink of collapse, and it seems nearly impossible for William to regain the employees' trust on his own. Yet, he seriously believes he can single-handedly fix the current situation. At a loss for words, William told me,
"An old-timer like you aiming for retirement benefits is fired. The company would profit more without an old man like you. We don't need noisy nuisances. Please leave right now."
Despite my intention to help, his terrible attitude made me lose the will to even try. Moreover, staying and contributing to this company under his leadership started to seem absurd. I knew what would happen to the factory without me, but that's exactly why I said it. "Are you sure you want me to quit?"
"Yeah, sure. Please leave. We don't need you in this company."
The employees watched our argument with William nervously. But hearing William repeatedly return my kindness with hostility made me sick of working in such a place. Many people retire at age 60, but I'm just continuing to work on my own wish. So, quitting now is no problem at all. "Understood. I'll leave everything in your hands then."
"Yeah, get out. Just leave the resignation letter on my desk."
Though some employees tried to stop me, I decided to go ahead and resign. After writing my resignation letter and leaving it on William's desk, I left the company. Things turned out just as William wanted, but he's likely to face hell in the factory now. Managing a factory isn't easy. He'll realize that soon enough. The next day, enjoying the relief of being freed from work, I was sleeping peacefully at home. My wife was out since the morning, probably enjoying a chat with her friends. Even if I lazed around until noon, she wouldn't scold me. But my peaceful sleep was shattered by the ringing of my smartphone. Checking the screen, I sight was from Clouds Machine Manufacturing. Thinking it might be urgent, I answered the call. "Hello, this is Daniel."
"Hey, Daniel."
I recognized the voice as William's. Wishing I hadn't answered, I responded, "What's up, William?"
"The conveyor belt isn't working, and the whole line is stopped. It's too spiteful of you to sabotage like this."
Accused of something I had no part in, I furrowed my brow. "What do you mean, the whole line stopped?"
"Yo, you did that, didn't you?"
"I didn't tamper with the conveyor. In fact, I left midday yesterday after resigning, and everything was still running then. There was no chance for me to rig anything."
"That is right."
William faltered when I pointed out the inconsistency. He was trying to pin the blame for the machine breakdown on me, probably because he thought I held a grudge. Some machines in the factory are old and can be finicky. I can't help if you blame me for that. I knew some machines were prone to errors because I had worked there for a long time, and I also knew how to handle them. But William, new to the factory, wouldn't know these troubleshooting methods. Probably at his wit's end because he couldn't fix the machines, he called me.
How can we even work properly with such old machines?
Even if you say that to me, if you say our equipment is old, why don't you invest in it yourself?
Damn it.
He complained about the old equipment, yet he didn't seem to want to spend money on new machinery. All talk, no action, that's the kind of president he was. Though I knew replacing manufacturing machines would cost an eye-watering amount. That's why we kept using the old ones with care.
Anyway, tell me how to fix this.
There's a trick to it.
That's what I'm saying. Don't beat around the bush and just tell me the trick. We're going to be out of business.
I'm not obligated to teach you that anymore. I resigned yesterday, remember? As I played hard to get, William fumed on the other end of the line. He was the one who kicked me out. So I have no obligation to be nice to him.
Then come to the factory now. We're incurring huge losses every moment. Can you take responsibility for that?
That's why I resigned yesterday, and I was just a regular employee, you know, so why should I have to go to the company? Weren't you the one who said I was unnecessary and a hindrance? So, calling me back to the company, does that mean you're ready to apologize for treating me as a nuisance?
What? Getting cocky, aren't you?
So, you're not planning to apologize. In that case, I have no intention of returning, so please handle it yourself. Goodbye. I heard William trying to keep me on the line, but I hung up anyway. A few days later, I was at a bar, invited by Jack. Apparently, the machines have not been working since the day William called, and all the employees are on paid leave. For the employees' discontent with William, the situation couldn't be more amusing.
Did you hear the conveyor stopped working?
Yay, I heard. William called me in a panic. Jack, already tipsy, said with a laugh.
William was pressing all sorts of buttons in a frenzy, but nothing worked. He couldn't figure out the control panel either. In his irritation, he kicked another machine, and now that's broken too, causing a huge uproar.
That's quite a story.
Jay, you could have fixed it right away.
Having worked at Cloud's machine for so many years, I was not only familiar with the products we manufactured, but also with operating the machinery. Whenever there was a machine trouble, I was usually the one called upon. It's true, most of the time, just restarting the conveyor would fix it, but someone with no experience in the factory wouldn't know that. Moreover, I had a broad knowledge of the products we made and our clients. Both sales and manufacturing departments often relied on me for help. The heads of each department would come to me for advice whenever they needed it.
Now, with the factory halted, we can make deliveries, and our clients are furious. I don't know how they're managing it, but if this continues, we'll have to pay penalties to several clients.
That would be a nightmare. Penalties to multiple clients.
Not just that, if the machinery is really broken, there will be repair costs too.
Right. You said he broke a machine by kicking it. Kicking a machine out of frustration is just pathetic. But since he'll have to pay for the repairs, it's his own fault.
With the transaction stalled, administrative work has exploded, and the president seems to be in over his head. The day I was sent home on leave, he was wrestling with a mountain of paperwork. Probably hasn't slept in days.
That's tough, but it's a case of reaping what you sow.
Exactly. The real mistake was driving Daniel out. No one knows the ins and outs like you. Now, if a machine breaks down, who are they going to ask?
Jack sighed. I teased him a bit. Aren't you one of the seniors now?
Yeah, but I can't manage everything like you. I'm content with my routine of assembling quietly and having a beer after work.
But I'm not there anymore.
Come on, don't say that. Please come back.
He pleaded, but I just gave a wry smile. I tried to help William multiple times, but he repaid me with hostility. I couldn't bear working under such a person any longer.
William keeps saying, "Why won't you listen to me? If he were a good person, I would listen." But William knows nothing about the factory and keeps imposing unreasonable demands on us. How can anyone follow such an irrational boss?
Exactly. If only he valued the ground reality like the previous president.
Those were good times under President Henry. I wish he could return, but he's 70 now, probably hitting the limit.
Jack sighed again. I've heard that the average retirement age for a president is 68. Considering that, Henry's dedication to the factory until 70 is nothing short of remarkable. Thinking of Henry, I asked Jack, what will happen to the factory if things stay this way?
If it doesn't start running, we may go bankrupt, right? But I hate to lose our jobs. I hope it recovers somehow. But with the factory in such a bad state, maybe Henry will step in, right?
William and Henry are father and son, so it's natural for them to be aware of the situation. However, given William's personality, it seems more likely that he hasn't shared anything. So, Henry might be completely unaware of the current state of Cloud's machine. Yeah, it looks like the factory might really go under. I'm not fond of William, but it'd be sad to see the factory gone.
I've heard about companies falling into chaos with a change in presidency, but never thought I'd experience it firsthand. Wonder if there are any places that hire in their 50s. I should start looking.
You might find something if you're not picky about the salary.
Don't hit me with that harsh reality.
Jack held his head in his hands. It might be manageable in your 40s, but in your 50s, it seems there's little room to be choosy about salary and benefits.
Well, let's not worry about that now. Let's drink tonight, Daniel.
Saying so, he poured some drinks. He might not be the best at his job, but his amiable nature is endearing. Thanks. I continued drinking and having a good time with Jack for about an hour. A few days later, I got a call from Jack. There was a clash between the employees and William, creating a tough situation.
I really hate to bother you with this, but there's no one else we can rely on but you, Daniel.
I had no intention of ever returning to work, but hearing this left me with no choice. I have nothing but bad memories of William, but the employees have always been good to me. And I have a deep connection with Cloud's machine after working there for so many years. If the employees are in trouble, I can't just ignore them. With that thought, I drove to Cloud's machine manufacturing. When I arrived, I found William and about 10 employees in a heated standoff in the factory. Jack, now the eldest among them, seemed to be arguing with William.
It must have been you guys who broke the machines, right? You did it on purpose to frame me. I'll charge all the damages incurred during the downtime to you.
William was trying to pin an unfounded blame on the employees. But it's ludicrous to think that employees would break the machines out of spite. If you intentionally break a machine, you will not be able to work, and if someone gets evidence of that, you will have to pay compensation to all parties, including your own company and your clients. Does he really think his employees would break a machine if they took such a risk?
What are you talking about? We haven't done anything to the machines. This company has been around for years, so naturally, many of our machines are old. It's just normal wear and tear. Blaming the employees for machine failures doesn't seem like something the president would do.
Keep talking. You guys have wronged me.
Jack desperately tried to argue their innocence, but William wasn't listening.
In the past few days, dealing with machine repairs and client communications, I've been put through hell. I barely slept last night. I heard employees in manufacturing can be difficult, but to go this far just because you hate the boss.
It's absurd to stereotype employees based on the factory work. This place has many dedicated workers who feel indebted to the former president and work hard for the company. Have you, as the president, ever tried to understand and support the hard-working employees even once?
Yay, that's right.
Jack and the others were vehemently defending themselves. They too have worked at this company for a long time. They care about the company and don't want it ruined by William's whims.
I'm the president now. It's only natural for me to give orders, yet you all do nothing but complain and resist. How can you call yourselves dedicated?
I don't want to hear that from you. It's okay to be new and not know the ins and outs, but you refuse to learn and instead push all your ignorance onto the employees. We cannot follow someone who acts so unfairly.
While admiring Jack's strong words, I stepped into the conflict. William?
Daniel.
Jack's eyes widened as he saw me. William sneered upon seeing me.
What does a retiree like you want? Showing up here? You don't belong here anymore.
I came because I heard about the conflict between you and the employees. What's going on here?
It's their fault the machines broke down, but they deny it. It doesn't make sense. How could the machines suddenly stop working right after I became the president?
He complained, but the answer to that was simple. I decided to enlighten the ignorant William. You've probably heard this multiple times from the employees, but many machines here have been used for a long time. Of course, they can suddenly stop working. Until now, we've dealt with that by maintaining and carefully using them.
What? Acting all high and mighty? Huh?
William gritted his teeth and glared at me.
You must have found it troublesome when they stopped suddenly, right? So, you must have intentionally damaged the machines under the guise of wear and tear, I'm sure of it.
We knew these machines could be restarted and made to work again. Why would we need to break something that we know can work? Besides, many employees find these older, familiar machines easier to use than new ones.
You say that, but you probably broke them out of spite when you left, just claiming it was wear and tear. What a petty way to get back for being forced to retire. All because of your incompetence.
Frustration welled up in me at William's relentless distortions. If he doesn't understand how the factory works, he should learn instead of blaming others for his ignorance. It seemed like nothing I said would make him understand. You really are beyond help. That's why the employees won't follow you. You call them incompetent and unserious, but perhaps it's time you realize you're the most incompetent here.
What did you say?
Maybe I hit a nerve. As William advanced towards me angrily. As we stood close, exchanging sharp glances, the tension in the air peaked.
Enough.
Henry.
Jack was startled by the unexpected voice. The other employees were also wide-eyed in surprise. Entering the factory was Henry. It must have been unexpected for him to show up. Henry, you came.
I had to come when I learned about this situation. My son seems to have caused quite a mess.
Henry and I were close enough to drink together, so we knew each other's contact details. I reached out to him, unable to stand the situation, and he was clearly shocked by my call. Henry approached William with long strides.
William, I gave you the presidency because you always wanted it, but what is this mess?
William flinched at his words, but quickly started making excuses.
But, Dad, they won't listen to my orders. I'm the president. They should follow my commands.
If your commands aren't reasonable, it's only natural they won't listen. They are not mute puppets. Pressuring them to work under dissatisfaction leads to situations like this.
Unable to argue back, William seethed in silence.
And to top it off, you forced Daniel to retire. He has contributed to this company since joining. No one knows this company better or is more respected by the employees than him. It was inevitable that this would happen after you made him leave.
Henry glared sharply at William.
I thought of entrusting the presidency to you because you've always wanted it, but all you did was mess everything up. You're fired. If you want to be president again, reflect on your actions and learn proper management.
Why, Dad, why would you say that? I'm the son of the president. This company is mine.
Be quiet.
When Henry rebuked him, William collapsed on the spot and said nothing. Henry then turned to me.
Daniel, I'm asking again, would you consider becoming the president of this company?
Hearing Henry's words, the employees, who knew I had always worked as a regular employee, were stunned. But I was not surprised. Henry had repeatedly approached me to become the next president. I had declined, wanting to focus on development, even when his retirement was decided.
I always wanted you to be the next president. Seeing the current state, it seems you're the only one who can manage this factory. Of course, all the debts incurred will be charged to William, and you can take over as before. So, please consider it.
That's outrageous. I'm just in development. I can't lead the employees.
But no one else knows this factory like you do. Isn't that clear now? I can look for another president, but I doubt I'll find anyone better than you.
All eyes were on me, their silent plea evident. They were tired of having a president who knew nothing about the factory.
Can I really ask this of you?
Hearing Henry's words and feeling the employees' anticipation, I pondered and then made my decision. All right, I'll give it a try. I wasn't sure if I could act as a president. However, this incident made me feel that it's better for me to take charge rather than leaving it to some stranger. Besides, I have a deep attachment to Cloud's machine manufacturing. I may have hastily answered that I would retire, but if I can still work here, it would be an honor. Hearing my decision, the employees were overjoyed.
Great. We can rest easy with Daniel in charge.
Now we can finally work in peace.
How could that old man take my plant away from me?
William seemed to have always wanted this factory, but now no one supported him. Caught up in immediate profits and treating employees like mere pawns, he reaped what he sowed. I saw Henry leading him away, probably to discuss the debts he must pay. Afterward, William talked with Henry and apparently had to pay the penalties for undelivered contracts and the repair costs for the broken machines. Of course, Henry does not help with any of these compensations, so William has to take on debt to pay them off. Additionally, it seems William apologized to the clients he had troubled, and for now, Cloud's machine has returned to its previous state of business dealings. It seems William, who rarely held a job for long, is now working as a delivery person from morning till night to pay off his debts. Hopefully, this will teach him the value of hard work. Then, I promptly checked the conveyor belt that was reported as malfunctioning. It was the usual error, and a simple reboot got it working again. Thus, the factory resumed its normal operations. We returned to days without overtime, and the employees seemed relieved. Unexpectedly, I became the president of Cloud's Machine Manufacturing. I braced myself for what I needed to do, but in reality, my work didn't change much from before. I continued to monitor the employees, adjust machines when needed, mediate between the sales and manufacturing departments, and even involve myself in development. The main change was the increase in administrative tasks, but this too was a good experience. I had been deeply engrossed in development work, so I was a bit sad to leave it behind. However, I was glad to be back at the company in this capacity. Age might be catching up with me, but my passion for development and the factory remains. I intend to do my best as the new president to meet the employees' expectations.
My name is John Smith, 30 years old. I work for a subsidiary of a major corporate group. The working conditions here are dreadful, with many employees breaking down physically and resigning. A strong sense of justice made me approach my boss, Johnson, repeatedly saying the situation needs to be improving. However, this has led to Johnson disliking me and subjecting me to daily harassment. Today, as I was about to leave work and stood up from my desk, Johnson suddenly came over and ordered, "Hey Smith, I need you to rush and prepare the meeting materials for the headquarters before the day is over." I was momentarily bewildered but responded, "I got it," and turned my computer back on. I recalled Johnson seemed to be idling away his time earlier in the day. If he had told me earlier, I could have handled it without working overtime. Why does he always assign work right when I'm about to leave? Even yesterday, as I was about to shut down my computer to leave, he said, "Take care of this," and dumped a load of work on me, resulting in me having to stay late for overtime. All these seem like acts of harassment from Johnson. Eventually, it took long to prepare the materials for the meeting that it was morning by the time I finished. I was at my peak of exhaustion, having worked overtime the day before. After submitting the completed materials on Johnson's desk, I decided to go home briefly to take a shower at least. Before 7 a.m., I found myself in the midst of the morning rush on a packed train, unable to move. If only I had left earlier, I thought, exhausted on the train. Then, I noticed a middle-aged man acting suspiciously a little distance away. On closer inspection, he was smirking and pressing himself against a young woman, probably a college student. The woman, looking frightened, tried to push him away, but she couldn't move due to the crowd. The man, thinking he wouldn't get caught, kept touching her, smirking. The woman was too scared to speak. Although there were many passengers and some noticed, no one seemed to want to get involved. I couldn't just stand by, So I pushed through the crowd, grabbed the man's arm, and confronted him. "What are you doing?" Startled, the man shouted, "It's a misunderstanding. Get off me." I held him down and asked the woman, "Are you okay?" She replied in a scared voice, "Thank you. I'm grateful." At the next station, I got off the train with the man and the woman, but the man suddenly started to struggle and ran away. I chased after him, shouting, "Stop, don't run," but he dashed through the ticket gate and disappeared. I couldn't tell where he went due to the crowd. He got away, I said, when a station employee came up and asked what happened. The woman was too shaken to speak. So I explained what I had seen on the train. By then, it took so longer than expected, and it was almost time to go to work instead of returning home. I thought about leaving, but I couldn't just leave the woman alone, so I stayed with her until the end. After a while, her mother arrived, having been contacted by the station staff. Looking at my phone, I saw numerous calls from work. Johnson must be furious. It's all over for me, I thought, feeling hopeless. It was well past the office time, 9 a.m., almost midday. In a rush, I told the station employee, "Sorry, can I leave now?" Just as I was about to go.
"Please, I want to thank you. Can I have your contact information?"
The woman's mother stopped me. I didn't have time to slowly give my personal number, so I hurriedly handed her my business card, saying, "If there's anything, contact me here," and rushed to the platform. I finally arrived at the office just past 11 a.m. Hurrying to my department, I found Johnson, the department head, glaring at me furiously. I apologized with my head down, saying, "I'm terribly sorry for being late." Then he yelled at me, loud enough to echo through the office, "Useless employees like you are fired, and now you're late too." I tried to explain the reason for my tardiness, but he wouldn't believe me. He shouted again, "Do you really think making up such a story will get you off the hook?" Furthermore, he threw the report I had stayed up all night to complete into the trash, calling it useless. When I asked what was wrong with it, he just said, "I don't need to read the report of a liar to know it's no good," without giving any specific reasons. I was stunned and didn't know how to react. He continued yelling, "Redo it from scratch before the meeting starts." His loud voice made other employees look over uncomfortably. How can I redo it if I don't know what to correct? The meeting with the headquarters was scheduled to start at 1 p.m. If I were to redo the report from scratch, I wouldn't make it in time. I rushed to remake the report. I haven't slept or eaten since yesterday. Feeling dizzy yet focused on completing the task, somehow, I managed to finish it by 1 p.m., but the meeting had already started. When I handed the revised report to Johnson, he yelled, "Your fault, we're late to the meeting. Take responsibility." No matter what I did, he would irrationally scold me, and I was at my limit. I almost said, "I quit," when the phone rang from the headquarters. Johnson answered, "Yes, sorry, Smith was late and had made an unusable report, so I instructed him to redo it." Seeing that he had reported my tardiness, I thought, I'm going to be fired. Then Johnson, after a pause on the phone, said, "Oh, Smith should come too. I got it." He seemed pleased as he hung up and came to me.
Smith, you've been called to the headquarters too. Maybe you're finally getting fired.
It seemed like he had been frequently reporting my misdeeds, real and fabricated, to the headquarters, eager to get rid of me. He must have reported many lies about me. I don't want to be in this company anymore. I should hand in my resignation soon. Though I didn't want to face more scolding at the headquarters, I was filled with a desire to escape. I knew I had caused trouble by being late and delaying the report. Even if I was going to quit, I thought it was only right to apologize first. So, I decided to go to the headquarters with Johnson. On the way, he kept insulting me. How did you even manage to live with such a personality? I'd like to see the faces of the parents who raised you.
So, it's finally time to part ways. I never thought you'd get fired so soon.
He seemed to enjoy talking about my impending termination. I was furious but endured silently. Until we arrived. When we reached the headquarters, I was physically and mentally exhausted. Just apologize at the headquarters and then quit right away. At the reception, instead of being directed to the meeting room, we were told, please go to the executive office.
Why the executive?
Johnson seemed puzzled. Not understanding the reason, Johnson and I went to the executive's office. Upon knocking, we heard a command. Opening the door, we saw Hayes, the executive, who greeted us with, "Thank you for your hard work. I've been waiting." Hayes, a close friend of the president since childhood, listened to Johnson trying to appeal desperately with flattery. Then,
the reason we were late, executive, is because of Smith here. Listen to this. Because of Smith's tardiness, we couldn't attend the meeting. And he even had the nerve to make up a story about saving a woman from a harasser.
Hayes listened to Johnson without a smile, his expression stern throughout. I just kept my head down, apologizing. Then Hayes stood up, came over to me, and said warmly, while patting my shoulder, "I'm glad to have a brave man like you in our company." I was dumbfounded, not understanding the meaning, and Johnson looked just as confused. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. The executive invited, "Please come in." A young woman entered, and to my surprise, it was the woman I had helped that morning. As the woman entered the room, she turned towards me and said, "My name is Miranda Hayes. Thank you for helping me this morning," bowing her head in gratitude. Following her, the executive also bowed and said, "Thank you for saving my daughter." It turned out that the woman I had assisted was a new employee at the headquarters. And even more, she was the executive's daughter. I was surprised but replied, "Are you okay? I'm glad you are safe." Miranda explained that she had shown her father, the executive, my business card and told him about the incident. The department head, who had been listening, suddenly changed his tone, saying, "Smith, you've done a remarkable deed." The executive, observing this with a cool gaze, sternly reprimanded him. "It's outrageous to place all the responsibility on such a brave subordinate." Johnson was speechless, his face turning pale. The executive further informed Johnson that various issues like embezzlement and harassment had reached the headquarters' attention and instructed him to attend a separate meeting later. Johnson, looking even more distressed, left the room. After Johnson has left, the executive and Miranda expressed their gratitude to me again.
If you'd like, I could arrange for you to work at the headquarters. What do you think?
The executive suddenly proposed. I was taken aback by the sudden offer but modestly declined, saying, I just did what anyone would have done. I haven't done anything special for the company. The executive was visibly surprised by my response. Unsure of what else to say, I apologized. I'm sorry to decline your generous offer. He then said with a laugh, your attitude makes me want you at the headquarters even more. It seemed like he appreciated my attitude. Miranda was smiling beside him. They invited me to a thank you dinner, with Miranda also joining. She added, I'd really like to thank you, with a smile. Miranda was so beautiful that her gaze made my heart flutter. I bashfully accepted, saying, yes, I'd be very pleased. Later, I had dinner with the executive's family after work. On the day of a dinner event, the chosen restaurant was an ultra-luxury one with an opulent exterior, a place I had never been to before. Inside, the decor was lavish, and the dishes served were all exquisite and delicious. The executive made an effort to ease my nerves with friendly conversation, and Miranda's cheerful demeanor made it a delightful experience. The executive seemed to have taken a liking to me as I was invited for dinner several times afterward. As it was ending, Miranda asked me, Smith, could you please give me your contact information? Yes, gladly. We started exchanging emails and soon made plans for dinner, just the two of us. As for Johnson, his numerous misdeeds were exposed, leading to his transfer to a remote location. With him gone, the working environment significantly improved. Now, I'm enjoying prosperous days both in my professional and personal life,